lecture, we talked about introduction to software development. We talked about programs are needed for problems that are complex, repetitive, require store, involve communication. Writing a program is not always the best solution to a problem. There's a number of alternatives, including manual system and using existing packages. Building constructions and software construction are similar. So there's the planning is essential. Specification are vital. Disciplined and approach pays off, and finding problem early saves a lot. The basic operating of a computer are get data, output data, calculation, store data, retrieve data, decide between alternative instructions and repeat instructions. Steps in programs development are understand the problem, specify a high-level solution, outline the solution, develop the algorithm, test the algorithm, write the program, test the program, debug the program, and maintain the program. So we've done all of that throughout the semester in our tutorials and labs and throughout our assignments. One of the biggest things that if I can ever advise you to pay attention to is understanding the problem. If I can divide your attention when you have a problem, I would say 40% of your time spent in understanding the problem, 40% of your time spending designing the solution, and only 20% time doing the solution. You find the people who fail is who they are in solution mode while they're reading the problem, because their brain is already distracted with the small knowledge they've gained from understanding the problem rather than seeing the whole picture, understanding the whole problem and how to solve it. So again, if I can give you any advice to come out from this subject is to spend more time and put more focus on understanding the problem, understanding the solution before you start doing the actual solution. Defining diagrams give an overview of the problem. A few of you had some problem understanding how to solve some of the assignment questions, and my advice was always to use visual defining diagrams, outline solutions, because these help you understand the inputs, the outputs, the processes, the conditions, the statements that result out of this processing. So it's very important to have that understood and practiced. Pseudocode and data dictionaries. So pseudocode algorithm is a series of steps accomplish a task. Pseudocode is a commonly used method to express an algorithm. Advantage of it is reduce not needing to know the syntax or specific language syntax makes it easy for people. It's almost English-like, so it makes it easy for people to understand. Increased flexibility because it's language independent, and it's easy to easy for understanding. Direction is used to clarify the use of data in the algorithm, so it's very important to know that upfront, because you've noticed in some of the syntax error you have is you're trying to do some mathematical operation on a variable only to find that they're not matching. So if it's clear to you at the start when you define them, which fields will be used with which other field, and how to make sure that the types are matching. Desk checking and the introduction to Python in lecture 3. So desk checking, it's a manual check of the algorithm. So now that you think you understand the problem, now that you come up with a solution that you think will satisfy the need to resolve that problem, before you invest in programming, you need to have a method, a way to check that it actually works. And for this level of programming and for this subject, desk checking was the tool that we used. And I hope that you've learned from it how you can actually follow the code and make sure that the values is what you expect to have. And in some instant, hopefully it also help you realize where you've missed or mistaken or have mistakes in your CEDA code, where disk checking allowed you to realize that and then go and fix it. Some most important statement used in CEDA, CEDA code are assignments, input and display. The arithmetic operations are brackets, multiply, and plus and minus, and so forth and so on. Operator precedence is very important. Refer to the order that operators are evaluated in an expression. It's very important to understand that concept, because it can completely alter your output if you don't understand that correctly. We talked about Python was the language that was chosen for this course. So Python was used as the main programming language in this subject. Also, we learned that how comments help readers understand the program. Variables have names and value. Referring to the names allow the value to be obtained. The value held in a variable can be changed while the program is running. The main data type we'll be using in Python are integers for a whole number, floats for floating point numbers, balloon for logical true or false value, and strings for just normal strings, words, letters. The operators used in calculation are the similar brackets, multiply, divide, plus, and minus. Equal is used to store a value in a variable on the left of the equals. So anything is so anything on the right of the equal will be stored in the variable on the left. The input function is used to input a string. Print function is used to display. I think these are two of the main function that we used throughout the course. Toward the end, we start using PyCharm as an integrated development environment, IDE, which include an editor for writing the program and a compiler where you can actually run the program and see how it works. A lot of you faced a number of syntax errors and errors are errors due to incorrect use of the language. So that's expected. The people who learn Python in this course, it's a new language to them, and like anything else, when you learn something new, you'll be making mistakes until you practice more and more and become a second nature to you. Then toward the 4th and 5th weeks of the semester, we start talking about selection. So up till that point, the programs that we were using, they were using sequence, performing instruction from top to bottom, and after one after the other. So it does not allow us to tackle real-world problem. So selection, conditional executing instruction based on some conditions. It's what selection was used for. Problem that have alternative actions or operation or optional actions suggest the presence of selection. So if, else if, and end if is used in the CEDA code to model selection, and we use the if, elif, else are used in the actual Python for selection. Comparison operators are used in condition to compare things. So the operators are equal, not equal, less than, equal, greater than or greater than and equal. Some problem required multiple way selection. Some required nested ifs, which is ifs inside if statements. Also, nested if can be used for multiple multi-way selections. A combined condition consists of simple condition combined with not, and, or. Not is basically negates a condition. Very important to remember that and is true if both operators are true, otherwise it's false. Or is it true if both are both or one of them are true? Otherwise it's false. So for or, as long as there's at least one true or both true, it will be true. Otherwise it's false. So compound condition may involve multiple variables. Care need to be taken to ensure that there aren't any gaps in the logic. So all possible case and problem and paths through the logic need to be examined. So again, I've noticed in some of the assignments that sometimes we don't look at the full picture of the logic that we testing, which leave potential areas for logical errors. So we need to, if we're testing a value, we need to make sure that we're testing all possible values in that range. And balloons variables hold one of the value, it's either true or false. Other things we talked about in lecture 5 is a print can display multiple literal values and or variables. Indentation and white space are a blank space or blank line that are used to make code easier to read. But not only that, in actual Python, if you don't do indentation when you have selection, you might have, you will have a static error. The value of good variable names cannot be underestimated. That makes it easy for you yourself to understand what you're coding, but also in the future maintenance. Syntax error result of incorrect use of the language. The code does not follow the rules of language. Syntax errors are detected by the compiler. Logical error when the program is running and are caused by mistakes in the logic. So the code does not do what was intended or it's required. And that's syntax errors is easier to find because the compiler will find it. Then when we're talking about logical errors, it get a bit harder, and the way you can find them is by increase your testing scenarios, and then runtime errors occurs when a statement attempt an illegal operation. They can be difficult to detect sometimes. So again, intensive testing is what can find runtime errors, because if you're not testing all possible scenarios, and when I say possible and not possible, you think about my experience in the bank is we try to think about everything a logical person can think of, and we test it, and then some, because there's I describe it like a flow of water. If there's any small gap, the water will find its way into it. So you have to be really tight in your validation and make sure that your code cover all bases. From there, we move to lectures 6 and 7, or week 6 and 7, talking about repetition. So repetition is also known as a loop, or looping, or iterations. Repetition involve repeating instructions or statements 0 or more times. There are 3 main types of loops. So fixed number of repetitions. So this is hard-coded in your code. the program will know how many times or this loop or iteration or repetition will be performed and require no intervention. Variable number of repetitions, but only known before entering the loop. So this is things where you prompt the user to enter them, or you calculate them before you reach the loop. But again, information can be found either through a variable or calculation. Unknown number of repetition, where entering the loop at runtime. So this when you use values to stop the loop from running. So the loop will continue to running until it reach a specific conclusion where it stops. Types of loop, we talked about the for loop. It's a simple type of counting loop. Signs of repetition in program. So how we know that there's need for this kind of loops is when we read things such as repeat, for, while, or the use of approvals such as students or customers, or repeated patterns in data. While loop are more flexible than for loops, allowing the loop to be exited when the condition becomes false rather than after a predefined number of repetitions. While loops are repeated while the condition is true, and we can use the sentinel value, our special input values that we decide what it is that are used to indicate the end of input in a loop. Infinite loops is something you always try to avoid. Are loops that once entered continue forever. There are some scenarios where this is desired, but mostly people end up in an infinite loop by mistakes. Loops are often used for totaling, counting, and averaging of numbers. Also, validation is used to ensure that value is correct, and validation simplifies process. So centralizing the code to check the values, it's also allowed the program to assume that the values is correct elsewhere in the program. If for and while are control structures, they might be nested, placed inside one another. Displaying tables of value often involve incrementing one value in the loop, from which the rest of the values on the same line in that table can be calculated. Any question up to this point? You guys still awake? Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Dan. Just let me know if I'm going too fast or if you need something to be explained a bit more. Then we move to functions, which some of you loved it and some of you hate it. So functions are subdividing a program into sub-programs, which allow for reduced complexity. Some of you didn't agree with that. Also permit work to be shared amongst developers and allowed for reuse of a code. So it reduces complexity because it means you don't have to have repeat similar code in multiple places in your code. You can just call that function, perform this activity, and come back. So it makes it imagined as a stories, and it's much easier to read one story rather than reading multiple stories in one page. So it's always easier if when you're reading a stories and there's something new, a new subject you want to talk about, is to refer to another book or refer to another page. So that's what we're doing with function. We're referring you to somewhere else in the program. So you focus on what's happening in that page. It doesn't change. It's also allows share works among developers. So the function that we practice in this course were quite simple and small. But when we talk about hundreds and thousands of lines of code for complex solutions, having function means is we're not relying on one programmer developing one program. We can divide the work based on functions, and people who are calling this function assume that function will return what they expecting. So that isolates the parts of the work to a number of developers. And also it helps allow for reuse of code. So that trick not many of you picked, some of you did pick. We did a lot of validation for input. So if you had an function that did that in one of your solution, you could easily reuse that function in your other programs. At this stage, using it would be to copy it and put it in your new program. In the future, you can save them in libraries and use them from there. In Python, subprograms are known as function. Function can either be a return. So when that function is called, a value will be returned where the function is called, or a void function which have no return value. So whatever actions happen in that function, the only way you can access them is by having a global variables. When a function is called, it's specified for the function is executed. When the function that returns a value exited, control return to the function call with a value, which effectively replacing the function call. So if I say call calculating double, when the function will double the number I'm passing in, when it comes back, that place where it says double, the function name, is now going to return a value. So it could be 4, it could be whatever number that we're trying to double. When a function that doesn't return a value exits, control return to the line after where it was called. So that's the difference between, also a difference between the two. So the return function returns a value. So the line that we called it from is where we're going to return to, because we want to have now a value to put into that variable. Whereas the void function, it would jump to the line afterwards when it exists. Function might be called as many times as necessary. In pseudocode, function declaration begins with the function name, followed by the function code, and end with either return or exit. To call execute a function, the name of the function followed by a brackets is used. In Python, function begin with def to define them, followed by the function code. To call execute a function, the name, so a function, the name of the function followed by a brackets is used as well. Local variables are only known in the function they are declared in. Their value is lost when the function exited. So another important thing to learn about that is, for example, if I have 3 functions and I'm using a variable called days off. Now, if I have not declared this as a global variable, and I'm using that days off variable in function 1 and function 2 and function 3, whatever the number will be at the time when the function run, as soon as the function finish, that number will disappear, or that value will disappear. So it's only valid while it's called, it's only valid in the function that is being called and running at the time. Global variables can be used throughout the program, so their value is lost when the program ends. So using the same example, if I'm using the variable called days off and I declare it as a global variable, then whenever the value change in whatever function I'm calling, it will be carried out through the whole program. It will only be disappeared or lost is when the program finish. Function are a type of subprogram that return a single value. The result produced by the function is substituted in place of the function call. For example, the result might be display assigned to a variable using calculation using conditions, and Python has many predefined functions. Print and input, so some of them. Then we move to the last topics in around Python, which is the list. And they are very useful, flexible, and powerful in Python. Lists can be empty or contain many items. Lists are enclosed in these squarish brackets, and the items spread by a comma. This is very important to remember. The index specifies the position of an item in the list, where the index start at 0 and go up to go up by 1. The length of a list is how many items are in the list. So if we have an example of a list that have 3 items, the index return will be 2 because it counted as 0, 1, and 2. The length will return 3 because that's the number of items that are stored in that list. Lists can be processed item by item, typically using for each loop, where the next item in the list is automatically obtained, or a for and a while loop using an index. Items can be added, append, or insert, or deleted, remove from the list using appropriate function. The plus operator can be used to combine content lists. And the in operator can be used to check whether an item is in the list or not. This can be used to slice or obtain part of a list. This can be copied, and list can be sorted using sort functions. So programming revision. Programs build up a mental toolkit for problems, types, and solutions. This tool is gained through experience and study, and continue to grow throughout programmer's career. When solving new problems, programmers draw on the toolkit to recognize problem types that they have encountered before and modify a previous solution to solve the problem at hand. And you've noticed that throughout the course. The more you practiced on solving the problems in tutorials and labs, the more you, for example, experience in doing validation, the more you used if statements, the more you use loops, the easier it gets when next you need to use that toolkit. The problem type studied in the subject are applicable to many programming problems. If you remember our first tutorial, we talked about vending machine, and I think that was one of my most enjoyable tutorial that we had together. It was a real-life example of a program which deal with an input and outputs, and does a lot of calculations. Program constructs sequence. So sequence involve executing a number of instructions one after another. So it's basically a top to bottom style. Selection is used when different instructions are to be executed depending on the result of a condition. So in this subject, we have used the if statement to implement selection. And repetition, so repeating something 0 or more times, and where we use the loops. Typical use for sequence type, typical uses are like user input of values, displaying literal values like 23 or hello world or whatever else. Initializing values, so count equals 0, calculating, incrementing, adding, decrementing, totaling, and also calling a function. Selection are typically used under certain circumstances, instructions to be performed. So otherwise, nothing special to be done. If without an else, or calculate an average value if value have been input is greater than 0. Keep the smallest number input so far. Determine if a number is negative. Also, a set of instructions are to be performed if condition is true, so otherwise the condition is false. So another set of instructions are to be performed. Characters, one of two different sets of instructions to be performed depending on the result of a single condition. Example of that, display whether there is a space left on a disk. If there isn't any space, display that. Otherwise, display how much space is left. A nested if structure is depends between two variables. The value of an unknown variable, dependent variable, can be determined solely based on the value of another variable of known value. So example of that, range of values, example, determine the cost per megajoule of gas rate for a customer, or discrete value, example, calculate penalty applicable on car insurance depending on the risk. Repetitions, the loops is always executed the same number of times. Example, display a table of values, or it can be used to execute a variable number of times depending on a variable value that is known before the loop is executed. So displaying a repeated series of characters, or display a table of values, inputting a series of numbers and doing something with them. The loop is executed a variable number of times that is only known when the user indicate they are finished. So example, loop until a sentinel value is inputted. Input a example of that, input a series of numbers until user type sentinel value, or input numbers of performing some calculation on them. Totaling or counting the average, and also validation is what we use loops for. Then on the last couple of lectures, we talked about C in case, which is a case-sensitive language. We talk about the brackets are used to group statements. Double forward slashes are used to comment to the end of the line. Simple statements are terminated with semicolon. Data type are int for integers, doubles, and strings. Display to a serial monitor is done using serial.println or serial.print. The difference is one print on the same line, one print on the new line. Arithmetic operation is similar to before, and the results in integrate division if the value of on both sides of the operating are integers. Otherwise, floating point division is performed, and is used for concatenating strings. If-else statement are used for selection, and the while statement are used for repetition. Okay. The two main functions Arduino C are setup and loop. When a program starts running, setup is executed once, then the loop is executed repeatedly. Arduino has pins that can be connected to electrical devices by reading from a pin. Input can be received from a connected device by writing to a pin. Output can be sent to the connected device. Pins can be used to practical purposes: digital input or output, analog input and analog output. Digital input output, it's either high or 5 volt, or low of 0 volt. analog input and output can have values that range from fully on 5 volt to off 0 volt. Pin mode is used to set a pin to either input or output mode. Digital input are read using digital read. Digital output are written using digital write. Similarly, analog input are read using analog read, and output is used analog output. Any questions? The other topic that we talked about in this semester is Unix. So it's a multi-user language, has individual user accounts. It's command-driven and has a hierarchy of file system.
Sorry, could I ask a question?
Sure.
It's just about the Arduino. I'm still not very sure what's the difference between digital and analog. Like, when would we use which one?
It's depending on the device that we're using. So analog, it goes like when you have a fan, for example, you can decide what you're sending it to make it move at a different speeds, and that's when we use analog. Whereas digital is it's different. I might have to get back to you on this to give you a clear example from the lecture.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you notice in all of the tutorials we have, when we connect devices, we use that have different current or change current, whether that is input like the dial or output like a fan or something that moves. We were using the analog instead of the digital.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
No worries. Unix. Unix file system. So Unix uses a hierarchical file system. They are a special root directory where it all starts with /. Files are referred to by their path name. So a file can be referred to by its full or absolute path. Absolute file names start with / and the rest. File can be referred to by the relative path. So relative file name must not start with /. Unix supports only one directory tree. We worked on a number of commands. Don't want to go through them. Please make sure you're familiar with all of these because you will have this in the exam. You'll be asked to perform actions using some of these commands. So make sure you are familiar with all the commands that we refer to in the tutorials and lectures. All right. So I want you to read this, and I'm sorry I couldn't change this because I'm not sure when this subject will go back to normal. I'm assuming potentially next year. So I didn't want to dramatically change it to what we're going to do in this exam, but things would be quite similar. And that's when we start talking about the examples. So what has the subject been about is how to view a data processing problem in terms of data and processing, the basic operating of a computer, how to view data processing in terms of sequences selection. Talked about that all above. Steps of programming development are to understand the problem, specify a high-level solution, outline the solution, develop the algorithm, test the algorithm, write the program, test the program, debug the program, and maintain the programs. Throughout the semester, you did a number of these actions, and toward the end, you had to do all of them. So specify the defining diagram, outline the solution, some complex problem, write in the serial code, do the disk checking to them, write the program using Python, and then have a testing plan for it, and maintain the program and internal documentation, external documentation. Now, availability. I don't have an office and I don't have a way to contact me easily. So if you have any questions from now until the exam time, or if you want to have a chat, please send me an email so I can book some time with you. And please give me plenty of notice. I work full-time other job, so I need to make sure I'll make myself available. So if you have a question, try to send me an email so that we can book a time that's suitable for both of us. And generally speaking, I will be available next Monday and Tuesday in the similar times as our lectures and labs. Doesn't mean I'm going to be there, but if you need to talk to me, you can book around these times. So from 9 till about 12 on Monday and from 1 till 5 on Tuesday. These are my preferred days. Revision, put yourself in exam condition to test your knowledge. So I want you to understand that because we're using multiple choice questions, I'm aware that some of you might want to help others. So the only way I can prevent that or minimize that is the test will be quite full on. So I'm expecting you to spend most of your time answering your questions. Don't get distracted because I'm expecting you to answer questions within a minute or two. So if you waste a minute or two, potentially you're not going to be able to answer all the questions. Pay attention to format. So when we talk in lectures about a topic like statements or function or list, make sure you understand the format of that. How is that? How do we use them? What's the syntax? How we use them in CEDA code. Be careful from answers that looks similar. So in a lot of the multiple question scenarios, the answers will look similar. There's only very subtle difference between them. So don't rush. Take your time. Know your subject. So spend time reading through the lectures and the labs. Have a look at your code and follow your code so you understand how it works. If you have the time, I personally will break my code. So I will remove things from my code and see what syntax error I get, because that will cement the idea of what is required for the syntax to work or these functions to work. The example that is being provided in here, the question, where is it? Like, what I'm going to try to do is, when I ask you for, like, in the normal exam, when I ask you to write a code or do this kind of actions, my question will be similar, except I'll be providing you with a possible solution. So in many cases, you're required to just pick the right answer. I'm hoping I will finish this by tomorrow. But for everyone, I want you to, so this is just a sample of a mock exam. I'm going to do a more comprehensive one, or like I'll add a few more questions. But the purpose of this mock exam that I want everyone to do is for me to ensure that you know how to answer this kind of style of questions. So the exam will be, I think by now you all got the date. I believe it's 17th of June, and it's from 9 till 10. If I'm wrong, correct me. So you have 1 hour to answer all the questions that you'll be presented, or that will be presented to you. I'm going to show you the 4 type of questions that you're going to have. So, for example, this expects 1 answer. So which of the following is the correct Python order of operator precedence? So let's say, for example, I choose that. This is one type. The next type is select from the below the steps required to develop a program solution. So this is expecting one or more. So we could pick these, and these, for example. This other type is type below the Unix command to find the full path name of the working directory. So these type of questions which require you to type, please be careful about the cases. So I might be putting some variables and expecting some calculation or validation or something like that. So if I'm using, the reason I say pay attention to the variables and the case, because there's a software behind this which I will be putting all possible solutions and check, which will check against it. So make sure that you put the right answers. And the last type is a true or false statement. So for example, assuming A equal 10, B equal 2, C equal 12.3, the answer for the following Python expression. So this is important to pay attention to which one get executed when in this equation. And for example, if I say this is a true. When you finish your attempt, you can return to attempt. You can check your questions, or if you're comfortable with all your answers, you submit and finish. This will obviously present to you your answers. I don't want you to worry too much about they call them short answers type of questions, because I'll be checking them manually afterward as well, just in case some people still have a right solution but did not meet my requirement. They'll still be marked and give some marks for that work. Any question?
Will the mock exam show, will it be graded? I mean, not that it is considered into our official grades, but can we see the answers once we're done with it?
I will check that. I wanted to run it as similar to real exam as possible, which we don't give you feedback in the exam.
Okay.
But if you're concerned about knowing the right answers, is that what you like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll think about it and let you know tomorrow. Potentially, I can send you the right answers afterward, or I can send you the feedback. I just need to think about it. This is new to a lot of people, and definitely very new to me. That's why I'm trying to use that to test what's going to happen in the exam. So I'm trying to run it exactly as the exam as much as I can. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
One other thing, want to let you know that there will be a bank of questions that attached to this exam. So potentially, not all of you will have the same questions. Different, the system will randomly choose questions. I'll be providing these questions in a list in the system, and the system will choose for different people. Just trying to avoid people copying each other. As I said, really think about yourself when you're doing this exam. So I would not be wasting my time trying to help others, because potentially any minute you lose, you're losing from your potential of achieving the full mark on that.
Can I just ask about the time?
Yeah.
The 1 hour.
1 hour.
When you get to the end of it, do you have to click submit, or will it auto submit?
So you need to click submit to finish it correctly. However, if you did not, it will, whatever you've resolved, it will save it. So I've chose in the real exam scenario, it's actually going to show you a warning, I believe, telling you that you're about to your time about to expire, to try to ask you to submit it. But I believe even if you don't submit it, whatever you've answered will be still recorded.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Because that's one of the things I was worried about. I was like, oh, what happened if these guys get to the end and no one submit? Make sure. Yeah.
We just had a bit of uncertainty the other day at the end. Like, did we get everything in? And we thought we did, but yeah.
Oh, in a similar scenario, like another subject, or?
Yeah, I think it was Josh. You were a bit uncertain. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Did you ask about it? Yeah. So when I was doing the setup, one of the options asked me if I wanted to do that, and I said yes. So like I picked that I will submit whatever you on when the time is finished. Yep. Please pass, all of you, because you need at least to pass this to pass the subject. So I wish I can. Look, the way I design it is you should have plenty of questions that are easy to answer to get you to the half mark. The only nightmare I'm thinking of is people get confused or distracted or something like that, which might affect that. So I hope that's not going to happen. I'm trying to do my best to help you guys. Really, for you to be able to pass this, you need to know the subject. So spend some time. Like, don't think you can turn up and just pick A or C or D or guess the answer. You were able to pass. Some question you will be, but majority of them will need a good knowledge of the language to be able to, like, I might be giving you a format and then an answer underneath it, which of this will be displayed. If you don't know how to format, you're not going to know the answer. I mean, you can spend 2, 3, 4 minutes in PyCharm trying to copy and paste and see which one will give you the right result. By all means, do that. But that will take 3, 4, 5 minutes. That may be 3, 4, 5 questions that you're not going to have time to answer later. So study well for this, and wish you all the best.
So Mustafa, the exam's only worth 30%. So just say you're already sitting at above 50% for the rest of the assignments. You can still fail if you don't have 50% of the exam.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So you need 15 out of that 30 to pass.
Okay.
It was 60, so we're much better now.
Yeah, but you still needed half regardless.
Yeah. So make sure you pass, please. I don't want to see any of you fail.
Is the duration still 2.5 hours, or is it shorter?
No. It's 1 hour. The exam is only 1 hour. Yeah. So please don't look at this information. As I said, I'm hoping next year this will not be there, and I don't know who's teaching this subject next year. If I'm not here, this information, if I change them, is not going to be correct for next year when this is taught. So just ignore these. I will send an email explaining the exam again, and I'm hoping by tomorrow I will have that link active for mock exam. So please, that mock exam will be open from tomorrow until the day before the exam. So you can do it anytime. can only do it once. But just have a practice. It will be only a few questions, maybe 10 questions. It's more to get you familiar with how to answer quizzes if you haven't before. So Josh, have you done was it an actual exam, like a subject exam, or was it like just a quiz? Oh, okay. Yep. Oh, okay. Yep. So
how did you look similar?
Okay. How did you find the experience? Yeah.
That was very hard.
And it is a problem. Like I've been thinking about this for many weeks. What's the best way to do it? Because if I make it very easy, then potential for cheating will increase. And if you make it too hard, I don't want you guys to fail. I want you to actually pass. So the balance is very hard. Very hard. Yeah. That's my plan. So my plan is to have a good portion of easy questions that if you attended lectures, if you attended tutorials, if you answered the tutorial question, it will be just like that. And then will be questions which require a bit of thinking. And then to be fair for the ones who study hard, these questions only people who really know the subject will be able to answer, so that we can have a fair range in the marks.
Mustafa,
yes.
Can we just get clarification on that? Because the rest of the marks are worth 70%. So just say you got, 60% out of 70 and you didn't pass the exam, then they're telling you failed the subject. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I understand if it was worth 60% of the subject, then yeah, if you fail, you obviously can't pass. But 50% of the overall subject is a pass. So is that still a thing since the exam has changed? It just doesn't make sense to be able to get 70% outside of the exam and be sitting on maybe 60 and then fail because you didn't pass the exam.
Yeah, I would check that.
Yeah, because that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I understand for the 60% exam, yes, you have to at least get half because otherwise you cannot physically pass. It's not possible because your other marks are only worth 40% and you're sitting below a 50. But now that it's different.
I'll check that, but my understanding is there are types of assessment, and there's type of assessment who the subject is relying on passing or not passing, and part are not.
Yeah.
But I'll double check that. It's not about the marks. It's not about what mark you get. It's about which portions of this crucial part you need to pass.
Yeah, I just think because it's now 30%, not 60, that might be a little bit different ruling, because I find it hard to believe they'll fail someone because they're sitting on 60 and maybe only got 10 for the exam, which gives them 70 out of 100.
But similarly, when you're doing
B.
when you're doing assignment, you are not really tested. You have more time to do them. You can get help from others to help you.
Yeah.
The real test for your ability to understand the subject only can be tested through an exam. So even though the marks on it is maybe not as big, but the assurance that you are able to understand the subject is demonstrated more in the exam than in assignments. But I will double check.
To some degree,
also,
yes.
Yeah, but I will definitely.
Exams.
Yeah, but I will definitely check and let you know.
Okay.
A fair question is a good question, so I'll answer that. So,
thank you.
Pausing.
Mustafa, how many questions will the exam be?
I haven't put. I haven't decided on that yet. I'm just doing some testing to see, on average, how long it takes to answer the questions. So I'm having few versions of the exam, and I'm testing some friends who familiar with Python. And then obviously you're not going to be expected to perform like them, but I will get some average there and then decide how many questions I'll put there. I want to fill that full hour as much as I can, so that you guys spend the whole hour answering the questions. So in general, mostly will be 2 minutes questions. So expect about 30 questions. Any other question? Alrighty, I'm going to check that point that Paige mentioned, and in the email I'll also highlight that the exam is 1 hour, the day of it, the time of it. So please be there on time. It will start exactly at the time and will finish exactly at the time. For any reason, if you are unable to attend the exam or you have issues while you're doing the exam, you need to let us know as soon as possible so that we can try and resolve that. Emails obviously is the way to do that. As I said, if you have any question from now to the exam date, please come on. Please send me an email and book some time with me and give me as plenty notice as possible. Preferred time is next Monday lecture times and Tuesdays labs tutorial time.
What about tomorrow and tutorial E,
yes.
etc.?
So tomorrow, the tutorial is for you to, if you want to, you can come and finish any tutorials that you haven't finished before or ask any question you have. So they are still there as lab and tutorial tomorrow. If you want to spend that time studying, by all means, you don't have to turn up to the lab or tutorial, but I will be there tomorrow. Any other questions?
But I thought we have to show our accessible tutorial.
Oh, yes. Actually, that's true. Please be there and show me your tutorial. Sorry, I completely forgot about that. So I just want to, you don't need to send me anything. I just need to see it. So for tomorrow, tutorial, you can come in the tutorial time, show it to me, and then you can leave after that if you want to. Any other question? In case I don't see you again, just wanted to thank you all for putting up with me. I hope I've managed to teach you something. I've definitely learned a lot from you guys. Learned from you and learned things about myself. So it was a very positive and good experience for me. I hope it is as well for you. If I can give you any advice, is please don't be afraid to fail. And I see that successful people who actually fail more often. The only difference is they own up to their failure. So different when you own up to your failure is you acknowledge what you've done wrong and then find ways to learn from it. So you build up a new skill. That's the unsuccessful people. So that's what I'm trying to say here. So unsuccessful people actually fail less. And not because they're good, but because they either avoid trying or because they always try things where there are others where they can point toward for blame. So own up your failure and learn from it. In my experience at work is people who you see the gurus of our development team. If you read their history, they've made some of the biggest mistakes through their careers. Mistakes like almost in the newspapers kind of mistakes. And that's because they challenging the boundaries. They trying harder. They wanted to see how things can work in a different way. They want to try things so they can learn from it. They see difficulty as a challenge because whenever you're faced with a difficult task or a problem, know that this is an opportunity for you to learn something new. If everything is easy and cruising, it doesn't mean you're smart. All it means is you're not challenging yourself. So always try to challenge yourself. That's it for me. Anything else you guys want to say or comment? Sorry? Yep. No. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, you've taken it on at a good time. Challenging time.
Challenging time. But I've learned a lot. I've actually I keep telling my wife, I wish what I know now about how to study, I knew it when I was studying, because I can see you guys. The mistakes that you do is some of you have this mindset which don't want to, like, you see things and you consumed with thinking it's hard, and you're not giving yourself what you deserve, which is the chance to just relax, focus on the problem, and just start doing the things you know. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know the whole story. We all know a few things. Do the things that you know well first, and then the picture will be built up slowly. And what I said in the beginning of this lecture, spend more time, understand the problem. A lot of times you're giving solutions that is not related to the problem. And that's because as soon as you start reading the problem, you are in the solution mode. Your brain can only do one thing good. It can't do many things good. So if your brain is consumed with the solution of the first sentence you read of the problem, your brain is not going to be able to read the rest of the problem and understand the rest of the problem. So spend time once, twice, 3, 4 times, read it as many times as you can. Write or draw diagrams so they understand the problem. And sorry, this advice is probably not going to help you in the exam, but I'm hoping it will help you in your real life situation in real jobs. It will help you with assignments, but the assignment is gone now. Yeah, and good luck. I can see a lot of you will have an excellent career in programming. And I look forward to see you either in future courses or future workplaces. Yep. All right. Take care, everyone. I'll see you, who I see tomorrow, and the rest of you, maybe see you in the street or say hello.
Thanks, Mustafa.
Thank you, everyone.
Mustafa.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Mustafa.
Thanks.